Welcome to the Tech Talk Thursday number 26. I'm Tom from Nine. I'm founder and CEO, and today we have 3 talks. One from Patrick Jundt from Nutanix. We will talk about the Kubernetes platform of Nutanix. Afterwards, we'll have Josua from Renuo. He will talk about RAM XOR downtime. And at the end, we'll have Josip from Cloudflare talking about application services and data localization. And snacks and beer today are sponsored by Nutanix. That's the company of Patrick. And you see it already here in the color. But I guess this is more a Microsoft issue than...
Yeah.
So Nutanix is not yet using Google Drive. In case you're looking for a company that is not working with Microsoft, it would be 9. We'll record the sessions and we'll live stream it on YouTube. It's also possible to watch the live stream later. Next Tech Talk will be on the 10th of March 2026. It's again a Tuesday. And you can join the Tech Talk group, so we'll get notifications if we create new events. I guess, as I know Rafi, our marketing guy, the event is already on Meetup. Cool, so that was it from my side. Handing over to Patrick.
Thank you so much, Thomas. Thank you. Hey guys, welcome this evening. I know I kind of stand behind you and pizza and beer, so depending on how much questions you have, we are going to divide that by slices, so let's see. Today I'm very proud, so thank you again, that we can show you the Nutanix Kubernetes platform. Just as a quick overview, right? I know most of you probably know Nutanix and the Nutanix platform as such. And today we are going to talk about this point here. That's the Nutanix Kubernetes platform and the Nutanix data services for Kubernetes. So probably for some of you which are not aware of what Kubernetes is and what it does, it started as an open source project, and we are trying to containerize applications into it. By that we mean we are able to scale that in a more or less easy way. So it's kind of a Swiss tool knife, right? We have, so you will be efficient, you will be fast if you include that in your DevOps process, and you do have a reduced operative issue in terms of you can push your changes and code fast. What we all see in the daily life of Kubernetes, I'm doing that since Kubernetes is there. There are so much things you need to take care of, right? You're going to scale up your Kubernetes platform, but what about monitoring? What about Grafana? What about Loki? So how do I get my log analysis well done? How do I get my Jenkins pipeline or development pipeline into stream? That's where kind of we come in. We're not going to sell you that at the moment. I'm not a sales guy, I'm a systems engineer. But this is kind of the overview on what we see, what is needed to really provide your customers or your enterprises with a Kubernetes platform or a container platform, right? So everything you see here is kind of mandatory to run that efficiently or in a way that we can say it is trustworthy. What do I mean by trustworthy? If we do not have a cost management in place, or we do not have, for example, Prometheus in place, we are kind of running blind on our Kubernetes platform. We do not have logs, we do not have metrics. Yes, you can do all that by hand in an open source project, because these are all open source projects, right? So you can stick them together and run them. But what happens if Prometheus is going to receive an update and it's not compatible with your Kube CTL, as an example, or Kube API anymore? And this is why Nutanix has now NKP, Nutanix Kubernetes Platform. What we're going to do is we're going to provide you with one single platform, and it is supported from us, right? So you do not have to have 20 engineers, one for Prometheus, one for Kubernetes, one for the server infrastructure. So we are all going to pack that in, and we are going to provide you the support for that. So we are making sure to validate that, test that, release it, and you will get the support from us. What we always see in our world of Kubernetes, and we will go into the deep dive, you do have your infrastructure administration, you do have your platform engineer and your developer, all with different needs. With NKP as such, you can do that with Kubernetes as well, but it is an easy way of separating the infra admin, the platform engineer, and the developer on a role-based access model. Now we're going to think about, you do have your Kubernetes set up. What happens with your developers? Do you really want to have your developers call you in the night at 2 a.m. in the morning? We need to have a fix implemented. Normally, it would be kind of the system engineer or the platform engineer to deploy that patch. So here is why GitOps comes in. GitOps provides you with a way of pushing the code into your repo and have that deployed automatically into your Kubernetes platform. What's kind of different than what we are doing with NKP, so Nutanix Kubernetes platform, is, as I said, you will get a solution which is all bound together in one solution. You do not have to care about the dependencies, and you can easily integrate your GitOps over APIs. Now talking about Kubernetes, and it's not really related to Nutanix. It's all a common sense if you're going to deploy Kubernetes. What about the design? Now, if you look at your workload, and probably some of you already do have Kubernetes or container environments available, what you can see here is I can either have that as management workload or management cluster, and my management cluster or control plane is controlling my cluster workloads, or I can have that as self-managed cluster. What's the plus and the minus of that? If I'm going to run with that, if that's going to fail, my infrastructure will be gone. Which brings me to high availability on NKP. It's your decision to have kind of, I have two data centers, and I have site A and site B, and I do have a management cluster and workload cluster A and B. That's all fine. So if site A goes down, I still can run site B because I do not need the management cluster, right, on the running infrastructure. I only need that for managing my Kubernetes infrastructure. If we look at an environment where we have 3 sites, we can span the management cluster over all 3 sites, and it doesn't matter if site A goes down or site B. We still do have the management capability. So how it works in a Nutanix way is you do have your bastion host configured, your management cluster with the control plane here, and your worker nodes below. As you can see here, we are all on Kube API, so everything is connected to Kube. What that means is, if you're going to decide, okay, now I do not want to use Nutanix anymore, feel free to move away because it's all native open source, just controlled. So you can move your workload to any Kubernetes platform you wish. Between here, we are using gRCP as the normal Kubernetes workload does as well. What we at Nutanix try to do is we are always trying to simplify your operations, meaning some of you know that you have kubectl get pods, kube edit, ingress, and so on. We try to simplify that in a way that we are going to provide a cluster API. It's going to allow you to create and manage a cluster, and it's also going to allow you to work on your workload clusters in an easier way than the normal kubelet. How we're going to install that? So this is the way, if you're going to use Nutanix platform or Nutanix NCI, we are going to start with a bootstrap cluster creation. And this is not a process you need to do manually. It's completely automated. So if I think back on my times, I was running around 30, 40 Kubernetes clusters on an open source basis with containerd. I had to do that all by myself manually. With Nutanix, I do have the possibility to have my bootstrap cluster creation. Then we have the API component install. And finally, if you look up here, we are going to destroy the bootstrap cluster completely for you. That's normally manual work you need to do. So in a day-to-day life, it makes your life easier because it's an automated workflow. It's going to provide you with 3 install methods. So normally, if you're going to bootstrap Kubernetes cluster, it's kind of a hard thing, right? So you have to install your dependencies, you have to install your container runtime. It's manual work. What we came up with is 3 simple ways of getting your NKP cluster up and running. One is you do have really easy user interface. So you're going to provide some information to it, and it's going to bootstrap your cluster from scratch. If you're a little bit fancy like me, I want to have control over it. So I'm going to use the CLI for that. What that gives you is more control, especially as an example, if we talk about ingress, right? What ingress engine I'm going to use? Is it Nginx? Is it anything else? Here I do have the possibility to configure that. That's the really advanced one. So as you can see here, we are talking about YAML files. So if you look at the way it is shaped, it's completely a YAML file you're going to deploy. And that's more like your manual process you would normally do in your Kubernetes infrastructure. Talking about private registries. And now this is kind of a question to you. Do you use private registries in your Kubernetes environment or public registries? Does private? Thank you. Good, well done. Does anybody know what's the kind of hazard if you're going to use public registries? What could happen? Yep.
Offline.
Right? Software?
Same. Or the repo can just vanish. The
they could remove old versions which you need?
Yeah. But could it also be that you will have a security issue with using public registry? You don't know, right? No, never. You don't know. So the public registries are kind of untrustworthy, right? In a sense that you never know if you do have a code inject somewhere, right? Or there is a library used that is vulnerable for your environment. This is why we are always, at least in the enterprise environment, we go with private registries. That, and if you do have an air-capped system, which means your Kubernetes services do not have access to the outside world, you will not be able to do a Helm install, as example, from a public registry. So what is it? As you can read, it's the same as a public registry, but it's running inside your infrastructure, and you have the control over it. And here we have all the answers, right? So network bandwidth, all right, not that much of an issue, right? But it is controlled access. So if you're going to pull a Helm image or a Helm chart from a public repo, you do not know what it's going to do, unless you're going to really be sure and examining every step it is doing. So you're going to download it to your private image. You make sure you're going to run your security scan. And then you're going to deploy it. As well as for air-capped customers. Air-capped customers are always customers which will not allow you to have any internet access whatsoever. So you need to have your private rig. These are basically, pick an image registry of your choice. I like Harbor a lot, but basically we are open to anything you are going to use right now or you're going to choose. Right. What we are going to provide you with is we deployed our application. We do have, let's say, 5-6 pods, 8 worker nodes, and so on. Now what's about the metrics? Built in, we are going to provide you with Grafana Prometheus, which allows you automatically to get your metrics, logs, and reports. We also do have Loki. So if you know about Loki, we are getting the logs out of your applications. How many workers do I need? That's always a question, and I just want to give that to you as some kind of guidance, right? You do have developers in your company. They will not tell you because they don't know. As simple as that. So we have two things. One is a resource request in Kubernetes or in the container world, and the other thing is a resource limit. A resource request is always something, if you're going to spin up a pod, it's going to grab that resources from you, right? So please be aware that as soon as you do have your resource request set, it will grab that resources and your resource limits. So if you are an engineer like me, running Tomcat, for example, in such environments, it's going to hit the resource limit anyway. So it's going to end on a crash loop, OOM killed. What does that mean in a technical term? We limited the pods or the deployment to the specific limit we set. And Tomcat, as an example, garbage collection, a lot of requests, it will be killed. So one thing I can give you with that, if you see that, it's probably because it is going to hit the resource, or it hit the resource limit. So you want to either increase the limit, which I cannot approve, or talk to your developers to check the application that it is running on. So in conclusion, right, you see that it's not only a workload consideration. It's customer workloads you're going to run on. It is your Kubernetes tooling that needs to be set up right, your Kubernetes core, and the Node OS. So everything needs to be considered if you're going to run a workload on Kubernetes. And here you can see again, ideally, what do we need, right? We need to have resource requests. That's my minimum consumption. Where do I get that from? Probably from the development or in our lab experiment. So if you're going to run that on our lab, we know. And again, tool loading. Please make sure if we quantified our workload needs, we need to make sure to add our tooling on top of it. And again, this goes down to the whole core workload we need, right? We can vary with the node numbers, but basically, if you're going to plan and size your Kubernetes workload, whether it is on Nutanix or on any Kubernetes services, make sure to take that into consideration. Comes down to the equation of less big workers or more small workers. And that's up to you, right? So if you do have a worker node which is big and it's going to fail completely. And it also may cause resource wasting. More small workers, meaning you do have more worker nodes as such, it's more OS overhead, simple as that. So that comes down to the decision that you need to make with the application you're going to deploy. Last but not least, right, what we have here is, if you look at that, we do have our Grafana in place. And if you can see now here, we see a control plane issue that started here. So we do have all the information and all the metrics available for you to really operate your Kubernetes environment in an efficient way and make sure that you have your customers served. With that, I'm already over time. Any questions? That was a deep dive, huh? No pizza slices for you then. All right. Thank you so much.
No, sorry.
Neben Zoom, oder?
Zoom.
Oh,
Thank you very much. Oh.
Double split. I don't know.
Well. Anyways. No. Just do it without the notes. Don't need any notes. But I don't see it then. So let's go like this. Good. Yes. Hello, everyone. Where is Patrick? Thank you very much for your introduction about Kubernetes. I really need this. I'm going to bring you another view, I hope, the one of the app developer, which was visible a bit on the right side there in your diagram. Just a tiny bit.
Just a small part.
But do you realize that we actually produce the thing the customers are paying for, the whole stack, right?
You're right, actually. That's true.
And you have a nice voice, to say that also. So yeah, first, who am I? I'm Josua. I'm working for Renuo. This is a Rails web agency. So we use a lot of RAM and basically don't care about what you guys do as long as it just runs. And we are a very happy 9 customer, because with 9, stuff just really works. And probably because I'm so positive about 9, I was also invited. And I also want to tell you how much I'm really not Facebook. See, I'm really not Facebook. I'm very aware that you probably, at 9, could run Facebook. You probably could, or Cloudflare, maybe. But I'm not Facebook. And that's what I'm going to tell you about. So, the agenda today is, I'm really not Facebook. I'm coming from Heroku, from the big RAM-based Rails world. And Kubernetes leaks a hell of a lot into deploy. Oh, maybe you recognized as well, since I'm from Renuo, but you just boldly using the deployer sides. So this is where I come from Control S deployments. Some of you might have started with that as well. You might have used Notepad++ and PHP with the Notepad++ FTP plugin. You change a file, you save, and it's automatically synchronized to your server, and it's live in milliseconds. I write the code, and I deploy in milliseconds. And this got all taken from me. We need to scale today. It's all load balanced, self-healing, auto-scaled, and secure. And in the middle here you see, oh, this is a magical auto-scaling group. And since it's all microservices, I can throw a team here and here and here and here. And I'm not really comfortable with that. I'm from the small world. I have really little apps, which I understand well, with all the context in my head. I'm using Linux, Puma, Postgres, and Rails. And I want to just focus on the code I'm writing. All the rest, 9 should do it. Patrick should do it. I'm bringing you examples of how small the apps are. I have, this here is requests per month. We are doing an app for Swiss Staffing, the temporary agency lobby organization, which collects for 50% of the temporary market all the KPIs from the software. And we aggregate them all, so we have 10 API users who deliver us. And there are 2 GUI users, me, who needs to check if the deliveries came in or if something didn't work to debug, and the customer at Swiss Staffing is looking at the aggregation. And these numbers here, they go to the SECO. So political decisions are made on this very, very small app. So, very small. I'm really not Facebook. And again, I have an app we do which has 10,000 requests per minute. so quite a bit, but still very much not Facebook. I want to say Heroku is way enough. This is where I'm coming from Heroku with Rails, where an app is just an app and doesn't need all the mumbo jumbo around it. So I understand my business case, and it runs on the web, and I'm basically thinking in HTTP, maybe SQL. Let's just hope that it's standard SQL and not an Oracle cluster or something like that. Well, and I just want to press save to deploy. So I want to show you a video about what Heroku was like in 2007. I found it on the web archive. Let's crank the audio full up.
When you create an application with Heroku, it's live and on the web instantly. Here I'm logged into my Heroku account on the My Apps page. You see I've already got one app named Friends, but now I'll create a new one just by clicking Create a New App. It takes a few seconds to set up my vanilla Rails directory, the database, configuring the web server, and so forth. And then it takes me into the code editor here, and we're just going to skip past this quickly and go to the upper right. This button here will take me to view the front of my application. Here I see my app is already online with the familiar Welcome Aboard Ruby on Rails webpage.
Done. Inception. Remember, this was in the netbook era. Everybody thought we will only run a browser on our laptops and everything will be in the browser, even the code editor and everything. This didn't turn out like that, but the ideal Heroku in 2007 basically looked like this. The idea was I could go in the browser and edit code here, deploy just with this button here. We'll see all the logs. I could do database migrations. What it didn't have was tests and CI. This is what I take an issue with. And it also didn't have the ability to throw teams and teams on problems, which I think the merchants of complexity really like in big companies. But it was enough for the company to be bought by Salesforce 3 years later for $200 million. Yeah, as a disclaimer, we are not using Heroku like that anymore. We edit our code locally now. We then push. Also, that's also why Heroku was a Git repository, or is a Git hoster, right? Because they came from the other side. At Deployo, we are not a Git hoster explicitly. You have your code somewhere else, and you bring it to Deployo. Heroku was different. And then they built your code and released it all in an instant. And the way to the release got longer and longer and longer. But I still like Heroku very much. I can focus on my code and on the product. The database is a sideshow. Networking is a sideshow. Load balancing is a sideshow. Logging is a sideshow. They use sensible defaults. And all you guys here are a sideshow. I like that. Yeah, everything, if it works. If it works. So yeah, but it's not a Swiss company. At Renuo, we already in 2015, so after 2 years of starting to use Heroku, wanted to find out, couldn't there be a Swiss alternative? I mean, this is 10 years ago, and customers asked us, yeah, but all in the US and this 150 milliseconds round trip, and so Heroku changed this themselves. They also have a European data center in Ireland, but nevertheless, the idea really never left us. And so we teamed up with 9 together to develop Deployo as basically the Swiss Heroku. So yeah, we thought we actually thought it will be really hard. But this is, I think, all the time bookings of the Renuo side. We spent about 3,000 hours on developing Deployo with you guys together, and you probably 10 times more, I guess. And not even counting the time Cyril spent on zero-pod open source contributing stuff and Kubernetes enhancement proposals.
Answering ideas and feedback.
Yeah, and he probably Cyril has more hours available than we all together. Don't really get it. So I want to summarize basically that I think we are there as Renuo, as a customer of Deployo. I can say yes, we run almost everything on Deployo now. We had got rid of 150 Heroku apps or so, and I think we have about 20 left, and everything else is running on Deployo in production since a year, and we never had a major outage. So I think Deployo runs really well. But the Kubernetes part, really this Kubernetes part, I really thought Kubernetes is magic. It's the silver bullet for all of your problems, and you guys know what you're doing, are you? Because maybe I only struggle because I'm not Facebook, but it leaks. In regards of mental models, for example, Patrick told something about culture or so. I just have a problem with all this terminology in Kubernetes. For me, I come from a world where I have a process. It listens on a port. For example, I like CGI. CGI basically is just a browser reading a file over a socket. And in the meantime, the server writes stuff to it. So it's basically just a pipe over the internet. And we all made this really complex, and I really don't get the reason why. Oh, I hope you do. But is now an app configuration what I should talk about, or an app configuration? And this reminded me also of a Java class, which exists actually. Terminology is just too complex. Then renaming stuff. It seems that in Deployo we cannot rename our apps, and I really don't know why. I can rename my files, I can rename my Google Docs, I basically can rename everything, but I'm not sure if it's just too difficult to keep labels consistently on Kubernetes configurations, so that I could just select by a name label instead of naming the resource. But currently we can just tear down the app or copy it, and then we have a different name. So if you have solutions for this, go to 9 and tell them how they should do it. Then persistent storage. We talked about NFS just before the start of the presentations, right? There is a movement in Rails which would like to go back to SQLite because we have faster drives, we have SSDs everywhere, and reading from SQLite is really fast. And you probably all think, that's not a real database. But only if you write a lot, that's really a problem. But I write Rails applications which don't write that much, actually. So yes, I'm used to not use files because I use Heroku, and there everything is 12-factor. We talk to S3 over HTTP to the object storage. So I'm kind of used to this, but this limit, so to hit this hard limit is really difficult for me. To not get proper file support, except for giving Nutanix a lot of money, I heard. I think you could do it, right? Yeah. It's too expensive. So yeah, if you have good solutions for files, you can also come to 9. Or sponsoring. And then the last point, basically what made the title for this presentation, just because I was really angry, frustrated, was that apparently, if I have only one replica, I can choose between, I will just have downtime. If I have one replica, I have downtime. If the node is being depleted, we'll have downtime until a new node is created and the app is moved. Why the heck? In my eyes, Kubernetes is just not there. The magic they promised, they did not fulfill, because I am not Facebook. I don't have 10 apps running in parallel, so that adding another replica just means 10% more of RAM. In my case, 2 replicas mean double the RAM. So instead of 30K per year, I pay 60. So I have it here, written by you. Kubernetes is not magic. And I'm kind of sad about this. Yeah. So I know the 9 guys are really searching for a solution there, but it's just not so easy. It really bugs me, because you can also not just duplicate the replicas during when you want to move a node, because the developer maybe didn't expect or wouldn't expect that there are suddenly 2 apps running. You can just not do that. And what struck me most was that Tom, the tech guy from the 90s, also thought this would just be working magically. And come on, if Tom doesn't get it, then it's just not right. Then it's not easy enough. Then Deployo has to become better. Then Facebook shouldn't leak into Deployo. Then or Kubernetes shouldn't leak in a Facebook, Google, Microsoft way into Deployo. It should just be easier, so that the simple app developer like me gets it and doesn't hit so many obstacles, and that Tom's expectations are just magically fulfilled by Deployo, because Deployo ought to be easy. And yeah, I have a summary to make. Maybe if you didn't notice, Heroku was great. You also want to say they are not that great anymore, because they started moving to the next generation fear. So we started seeing these 2-minute downtimes, these Kubernetes-like 2 minutes, 1 replica downtimes on Kubernetes as well. On Heroku as well. Before they didn't have that. Before, for the last 15 years, they were using Amazon EC2 instances, and they had their own custom router which only supported HTTP 1.1. And that was a problem. That's why we had Cloudflare in front to do all the HTTP 2, SSL, and HTTP 3 stuff, and DNS, and the downtimes of the week, 1 week ago, 2 weeks ago. But yeah, also Heroku is moving away from what made it great. That was just behaving expectedly most of the time. Yeah, and the big companies are leaking into my small app development world, and I don't like that. That's the closing words. Questions?
Wouldn't there be even a quicker way to deploy your application? Like in terms of just SSH into a server, enter Vim, edit your code, and you don't have to do anything at all?
Good question. Very good question. If you would have a disk, but you took my disks. No, but I'm really thinking about this as well. But it's not so easy, because you want to have tests. You want to run the tests before, so you don't want to deploy something which is not working, so stuff takes a long time, especially if you want to run a big 15-minute suite of browser clicking through stuff. But then again, maybe you could just deploy it, then run the tests, and then roll back if it didn't work. Probably not, because you have database migrations who fucked up your database as well. But maybe you could roll that back as well, because you have backups. Well, at least Heroku has rolling backups. You can say you can have a timestamp and roll back to exactly this time. Yeah, I would like to have this back, yes. Thank you.
More questions? Not, then thank you very much, Josua. Are we fine? Okay, cool. Hi everyone, my name is Josip. Today we're going to talk about data localization for application services with Cloudflare. To my person and to quickly introduce myself, my name is Josip. I'm a solutions engineer at Cloudflare. Just wanted to ask who knew about Cloudflare before the outage and the Cloudflare existed. I hope a few people, okay, so that's good. So it's not just that we are known for that, of course, but yeah, really happy to be here today to talk about the options that we have with Cloudflare and addressing some of the concerns that exist around data localization and data locality. So the first part I'd like to talk about is the application services, a bit of a primer, which kind of has to be explained a bit for data localization to make sense. As part of the application services, what we should look at is, of course, how the Cloudflare Connectivity Cloud works. So there's a lot of ways how a Cloudflare as a service could be described, but probably the connectivity cloud is really the best way to think about it. I mean, the numbers are clear, not necessarily going to go over them, but I think the important point to know is that with Cloudflare, that we have a Anycast network. And of course, with an Anycast network, what we can achieve, for example, you as a customer will always receive the same set of IP addresses once you proxy your traffic on layer 7 through Cloudflare, right? And what that means is that the traffic gets ingested closest to the users, and that has a lot of good implications for performance and for security as well, of course. With this huge network, what we can do, of course, is to mitigate DDoS attacks and provide security functions at the edge. I think this is really a key point also to understand the follow-up steps that come with it. This slide shows a bit how the traffic sequence looks like, generally speaking, with Cloudflare. Of course, the access and the traffic from the end users is ingested closest to them. So that means that with every request, what we can do is we can inspect traffic closest to the edge. From the architectural point of view is that every city, every POP that we run, runs every service that Cloudflare offers. So of course that means that
very important point is, for example, for the DDoS protection, that we don't, backhaul traffic to a central location, but we really have the edge locations that handle all the heavy processing, right? So that leads to good user experiences and, of course, increases security for our customers. Going through from the left, right, is, of course, the DNS. So that means if you have a full setup on Cloudflare with DNS, you have the part Cloudflare answering your DNS queries as a managed service. This product here, obviously, data localization is the key of this talk today, where we can comply with local data processing laws as well, because that's one of the topics that we talk about, at least in Switzerland, with a lot of customers, but also globally. With a lot of customers is that, okay, how is my data handled? Where are my TLS keys, right? And all of these kind of things are really important to customers, and that's going to be the focus of the talk today. Just to say here, between the data localization product and the DDoS protection, where we actually inspect the traffic at the edge, is exactly where the TLS decryption and offloading happens, right? And this part is crucial to understand, of course, that, let's say in the standard setup without data localization suite, is that a copy of the TLS keys that hold your server-side certificate is present on every Cloudflare POP, right? So that means that in order for Cloudflare to be able to inspect the traffic at the edge, of course, we have to hold the TLS keys in the default setup. And of course, with data localization suite, we offer different ways of how that can be altered. Let's say that that general behavior. Of course, this part then blocks threats to your web apps, APIs, etc. Yeah, probably not going to go over each individual product, but just saying that this is really the security part of the application services portfolio. We have, of course, the CDN part, which improves the application performance. We have the capacity scaling, load balancing here. The Argo Smart routing here, which is really a product that is optimizing the paths within the Cloudflare backbone. And in here, we have your origin and your application that you most likely will be running on Kubernetes, right? Yeah, so I just think it makes still sense to go over a couple of them in more detail. When you onboard or have Cloudflare as your layer 7 reverse proxy, of course, that means that Cloudflare is actually actively reverse proxying your traffic. And let's say the layers below are not really things that you need to care about as a customer. So that's really one of the main advantages here as well. And just to show that, yeah, we offer protection, DDoS protection throughout. And a bit this difference will be shown a bit in the data localization suite, how this behavior changes as you adopt potentially the product. Just to say, I often talk with customers in Switzerland that tell me, hey, why do I have to care about the global network? Why do I have to care about people in different countries, traffic from different countries? Is exactly because of this threat intel that we released in the previous quarter, right? Because if you have an endpoint in the internet, you can't really choose, well, who will access your endpoints, right? And this is one of the important topics, of course, is that what we are seeing is that from, let's say, Southeast Asia is increasing with attacks, and yeah, even like smaller companies in Switzerland can be targeted. This is not meant to, let's say, scare anybody, but just to show why, even though if you're a smaller company and you think, yeah, all of your end users are based out of Switzerland, it's of course still important to have DDoS protection at that scale, because these numbers are always increasing. Just a quick note on the Cloudflare WAF. With the Cloudflare WAF, we implement a layered approach to custom rule sets and Cloudflare managed rule sets, and these obviously give a lot of benefits to our customers and to the operation teams that are then yeah, let's say when there are attacks ongoing or when there are things that need to be managed is a lot less than with other solutions, right? And of course, there's quite a lot of lists, quite a long list. We have the DDoS protection. We have a machine learning part that is in there. We have the Cloudflare managed rule set, as well as the custom rule set that you can implement, and a lot of things as well regarding exposed credential checks, etc. And in the end here again, your origins that pass through this list of rules. Okay. Let's talk a bit about how the default use case or the default data flow looks like, and why some customers asked Cloudflare, hey, whether we can change anything on this default behavior. So generally speaking, how an end user ingests or goes to Cloudflare is that the end user connects to the closest data center from Cloudflare, right? So you have the last mile from the ISP, which then ingests to the Cloudflare POP. In here, this data center on Cloudflare, it will look at the traffic, it will inspect the traffic, decrypt it, do the traffic sequence that I showed earlier, and then it's forwarded to your origins, right? So that's the part that is visible. Then, of course, the metadata about this kind of connection, about this traffic, is sent to the core data centers that Cloudflare operates out of the US and out of Europe. And in here, then the question is a bit, okay, why do companies even care, or enterprise customers, businesses care about data localization? Of course, one point is compliance with data localization laws, data privacy and protection, competitive advantage. Of course, companies have a differentiation between what kind of other customers they work with and partners that they work with, customer trust, reputational concerns, intellectual property protection, and as well, which is probably the most important thing, is that they need actual technical measures in addition to stuff that is written in the contract, right? And this is exactly where the data localization suite comes in, right? So there are, let's say, three slices or three parts that are relevant here. On the left side, it's really, hey, where are the TLS keys stored that Cloudflare uses? The part in the middle is, where does the decryption actually happen of the session, and where is the aforementioned metadata actually stored? And then if we look at this part here, is that yes, we have the three products that exactly address these concerns. With the GeoKey Manager, you really have to control where the TLS encryption and decryption happens, right? On the regional services side, in the middle, you can control where that traffic, in which regions of the world that traffic is decrypted and inspected. And with the customer metadata boundary, you have control over how the metadata is handled and where it's stored. And now we're going to dive a bit deeper into each of these products. Yes, so with GeoKey Manager, in this scenario here, is that the setup looks like the following. You have the GeoKey Manager with your custom certificates, so not necessarily certificates that Cloudflare manages and issues themselves, but that you upload yourself, are present and configured to only be present in the US, for example, right? And in here, what happens is that the initial request that comes from an end user in Europe goes first to retrieve the key. And after it had retrieved the initial request, is that you have this decryption only done locally based on the session resumption and TLS keys, right? So this is to speed up the communication so that you don't have to call out each time to the central place where the key is stored. Important to note, of course, here that actually the TLS key itself here is never present on this location. So with this, you can really choose where the encryption happens and where it's stored within the data center's region that you specify. And there's one more version of GeoKey Manager, which is also giving you a bit more capabilities and levers to configure this. Then there's a feature that is not so often talked about in Cloudflare, which is called keyless. And keyless enables you to bring your own key. In this scenario, what actually happens is that on this side, on the key server side where your origin lives, what can be configured is the Go Keyless server part from Cloudflare. So it's an open source binary that is hosted and built on GitHub. What you can do here as well is hook it up to an HSM. And then generally speaking, how the flow looks like that we did before is that, okay, this negotiation and this part should be pretty clear and is standard for RSA keys. But here what actually happens is that Cloudflare never really looks at the key server or the key material that is hosted either on your HSM or on the Go Keyless server, but only that the signature is returned, and Cloudflare uses the signature and the session ticket and session key in the future for future visits. So that means in a sense that you don't always have to go back for each request to the keys and to the origin server. Regional services is then the part in the middle where the decryption happens, where you can say, okay, actually, I want the region where decryption can happen only to be in Europe, right? So you have your eyeball or your end user that is located in the US, that is ingested closest to the data center closest to him, which will also be US based. On this part, on 2, you can see that it's only applying layer 3 DDoS mitigation techniques. If you look at, or if you think about the traffic sequence in the beginning, what this means that is before or when data localization happens is that this POP is aware, okay, actually I can't look into that packet, I can't decrypt here. I forward it to the actual region that is configured for the customer. And in this case, it will be Europe, can of course be Switzerland as well. And once that happens, the decryption actually happens at the right place. Once the traffic is cleaned or also not detected as an attack, it will be forwarded to the origin server. And this just shows how that looks like in the dashboard. Once that feature is activated, not sure if you are aware with the dashboard or how that looks like, but this is basically the DNS section of the dashboard. And when you edit a DNS record, you can then select which kind of region you want for that host name. And in here, there will be a Switzerland selection as well. And this is really what regional services does. And then we have the customer metadata boundary. For the customer metadata boundary, this is the place where we are talking about the logs, where they are stored. So today there are 2 options to manage this. Of course, because our control plane part is available either in the US or in Europe, what the customers can define is whether they want to have it stored in the US or in Europe. And basically, the sequence of events is the same, just where are we storing the metadata about the traffic. And just to show here, this is how it looks like in the dashboard. Within the part of the configuration is that where you can define whether your region for the customer metadata should be the European Union or the United States. One of the, of course, important parts, and where Cloudflare also has a good track record, is in regards to privacy. So Cloudflare really invests a lot of time for also privacy protecting protocols. Also really pride on that to make the internet a better place. We of course have one of the, I think, earliest universal TLS for free services in the past. We have the Quad 1 public DNS resolver, and really what I can say is that also internally, whenever Cloudflare builds out new products or looks at enhancing solutions, is that it's always built with the privacy of the customers and its users in mind. Some closing remarks from my end is that in summary, really the privacy stance is that, yeah, we want to really build a better internet. We don't want, we are not making money with data from our customers, of course, or from free users. So the privacy and the transparency is really important from Cloudflare. Of course, there are all the compliance and legal frameworks that Cloudflare adheres to, also in Switzerland. But of course, yeah, especially the DPAs, addendums that are added, and the standard contractual clauses. But really, the data localization suite is if you want to actually technically make sure that this also happens, of course. Yes, that's the part with the technical data localization that we talked about. Just to show here, it's a small excerpt from the dev docs from Cloudflare. Just thought it makes sense to have like a small selection that would be relevant for customers in Switzerland. Regional services is officially supported as a region for Switzerland. As shown previously, the customer metadata boundary is currently not. So here the same applies also, that you can use the EO metadata boundary for Switzerland. And for the Geo Key Manager, that's currently not supported in Switzerland as a region, but of course there we have the keyless SSL possibility as a fallback. And there will be more things to come in the future. That's basically it from my side. Thank you very much for your attention. And of course, if there are questions.
Questions, yeah.
First of all, thank you. You more or less already answered it in the last slide, but the boundary system seems to be pretty interesting for some of our customers as well. Will it be possible at some point to also maybe have a customized subset of boundaries which you can define?
Yes, yes. That's definitely where this is heading in the future roadmap. And that's something the team is working on and is aware of, yes. That's like a feature that's often requested, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
More questions?
Thank you very much. I wanted to ask you about the keyless. Can you explain this maybe again? What do I need? You said something about the binary I need to install. How does this work exactly?
Sure. So in this part here is that what you basically need is kind of like a reverse proxy on your end that makes this kind of interaction possible, right? So there is Go Keyless, which is something developed by Cloudflare that enables you to either have the private and or the private public key pair on the keyless server itself, or you can have it in an HSM, and basically you can integrate it to a PKCS11 interface, like you would with any other interaction with the HSM. And this part here is then really where you make sure that the private key that you have on your key server never leaves your security boundary. Right, so in that instance, it's not the case that Cloudflare can see your private key or private key material. Right, so it's really working based on session keys.
Okay.
I hope that answers it.
Will read it up myself.
Cyril?
Just a follow-up. In this case, Cloudflare can still decrypt the traffic though? Or
It has to
using those session keys,
Absolutely.
right? Okay,
yes.
okay.
So the idea here is really that you keep custody of your private key material, right? But Cloudflare really has to look at the traffic to apply
The rules and
layer
yeah.
7 DDoS protection and the WAF, exactly.
Okay.
More questions? Not, so then we're at the end. So as a conclusion, I think we can hope that DG Pizza that we are waiting for is not using Kubernetes and also not Cloudflare, at least not the Monday before.
When it breaks. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.